The oldest and strongest human emotion is fear. And the oldest and strongest type of fear is trepidation of the unknown. When we were children, our parents told us that monsters didn't exist. But we were sure that something was lurking under the bed or in the closet. Fear sees, even if our eyes are closed. Welcome to the realm of the arcane. My name is Lon Strickler. Join me as I examine unexplained creatures, strange manifestations, and remarkable realities. Imagine this next hour as a voyage of discovery to strange lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge of the supernatural. Come on board as we begin this adventure together. Where we explore the unexplained live on Beyond Explanation. I'm your host, Lon Strickler, coming to you within a cannon shot of historic Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining us. Quick note, Arcane Radio and the Beyond Explanation channel is made possible by you liking, subscribing, and sharing our programming. Super Chat donations are essential for us to continue offering you our unique content. Your consideration is very much needed and appreciated. So tonight we got a very special show. Our guest is Debra Jordan-Kauble, and she is an ordinary woman with the habit of attracting the extraordinary. After reporting a terrifying anonymous experience to Bud Hopkins, pioneering researcher of alien abduction phenomena, Debra's life takes a dramatic turn as she becomes the central figure in Hopkins' best-selling book, Intruders, and its popular TV adaptation. But while the TV series ended with a clear resolution, Debra's astonishing story continues in real life. In Extraordinary Contact, Debra shares with the readers her close-up and personal experiences with UFOs, poltergeist, the afterlife, electronic voice phenomena, premonitions, synchronicities, and non-human entities. Such phenomena are woven throughout the vivid tapestry of Debra's life flourishes of the anomalous, offset against the everyday backdrop of factory work, family, and friends. Now, spanning 4 decades, Extraordinary Contact is a story of resilience and growth in the face of trauma, tragedy, and loss, and an intimate first-person account of what it means to be a lifelong experience of impossible phenomena. You can find Debra's website, UFO Information Clearinghouse, at debshone.com. So, Debra, thank you for joining me this evening.
Thanks for asking. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I saw that you had published the book, and I read Bud's book about your ordeal, Intruders. Mm-hmm. And I do believe I may have seen the TV movie. That was Richard Crenna and Mayor Whittingham, I think it was.
That's right.
Yeah, and though they didn't use your name and the family's name, the story was yours. So let's go back to the very beginning, where you and your family noticed the mark in the backyard.
Well, that was, I can't believe it was 38 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, June 30th, 1983, I was a single mom, and just not too long before that moved back home with my parents. And I had 2 little toddlers. They were 14 months apart, 2 little boys. And I didn't have a job at the time. And so to make extra money to help my parents, I would cut out patterns for a gal who lived behind us, who was also my friend. She was a costume maker, and I couldn't sew, but I could cut a good line. So I was about to go help her cut some patterns that night. I was standing at the kitchen window, washing my hands, looking out, and I noticed a light in the pump house of the swimming pool. Mm. Mom and Dad had a big swimming pool in the backyard, one of those cement ponds we used to jokingly call it.
Right.
And the light shouldn't have been on, the door shouldn't have been open. And I thought something was weird, even weirder about it, but I didn't really put my finger on it at the time. And I told my mom, I said, hey, there's a light on in the pump house. She said, don't worry about it. Your dad can get it when he gets off work. My dad was working at Ford, down there, second shift electrician. So he wasn't home at the time, but he would be home later on that night. So I got ready to leave, and I got in my car, and the house is a tri-level, and the driveway splits. One part of it goes down the front of the house there was a 2-car attached garage, or 1.5 car attached garage on one side. And then the other side, it split, went down the side of the house, past the swimming pool. And then there was like a little turnaround in the back, because Dad had a workshop back there, and he had his ladder truck parked in that little turnaround in the center of it. And I thought, you know what, I'll just go down that turnaround real quick before I leave, just to make sure I didn't see anybody. I'm thinking prowlers, not aliens by any stretch. So I go down there, and I drive back up, look over everything really well. I don't see anything. So I go on over to Deanna's. It takes like 2 minutes to get there. And I called Mom when I got there, because one thing I did notice is that now the pedestrian door to the attached garage in the back was open, and we don't typically leave that open. So I called her and I said, hey, the pedestrian door is open, but I didn't see anybody out there. And she said, don't worry about it. I'll just lock the doors. You know, your dad, we'll be fine till your dad gets home. I'm like, okay. So I hung the phone up, and she calls right back, and I answered it. And she says, I want you to come home right now. And I said, oh, you know, she sounded like she was scared, and that was out of character for her. So I'm like, well, what's wrong? And my friend's husband overhears this, and he, you know, they can hear my voice. I'm a little worried now. And Larry yells over my shoulder, tell her to call the police. That's what they get paid for. And she heard him, and she said, no, I don't want anybody here but you. I'm like, okay, fine. So I'll be back. So I got my car, and I went back home, and I pulled back up that side drive again, but I stopped before I got to the swimming pool, because Daddy had built a little like Florida room there, and I could see that Mom was in it. And so I stopped, got out, went in there, and I grabbed the shotgun that was next to the trash compactor. Now, Mom says, you know, that's not loaded, right? And I said, yeah, I know it's not loaded, but whoever I come up upon isn't going to know it until I'm close enough to hit him with it, you know. I had requested Dad keep that unloaded when we moved in because of my little kids. So, you know, there was no way there was anything in it. But at that time, I was not a brave person. This was out of character for me, way out. Now is a different story. But back then, the fact that I even went out there, even with a gun that wasn't loaded, was not like me. But I did it, went out, looked around. I walked back behind the swimming pool. I found my dog under Dad's ladder truck, but she didn't come out. She's a little, like, I don't know, 40-pound beagle mix. And didn't see anything in the backyard. So I headed towards the pedestrian door of the garage. And I walked in there, flipped on the light, and I'm walking around like Elmer Fudd, you know, throwing off a cuss word here or there. There was no one in there, but the only place somebody could have been hiding was there was some box springs and mattress leaned up against one of the walls. And I thought, okay, if somebody's in here, that's where they're at. And I started to head towards that. And I suddenly felt like my body went on fire. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I got to get out of here right now. And I turned to run through that open door. And when I got to the open doorway, something hit me in the chest, like right in here. I guess the solar plexus, or what you call it, you know. It was like the whitest light. It was so white and intense and bright that it hurt. It hurt my eyes. It hurt. And I know my eyes were closed, but I could still see it. And I couldn't move. And it felt like every molecule in my body was vibrating. It was almost like I could feel each individual molecule of me all shaking and vibrating. And time stopped. I don't know how to describe it any other way. Is that I have no idea how long I was in that condition. Time stopped. In my mind, I think I couldn't survive that for very long, but I have no idea for real how long I was like that. The vibrating started to wane, then started to stop. The light started to get not as intense. and to the point where I could start seeing again. But now at this point, I'm out of the doorway a little more, and I feel like somebody's pulling on at some point, I can't remember when, I felt like someone was pulling on my right shoulder from behind me, pulling down. And then it felt like somebody shoved in my mind, I visualize a knitting needle that was like hot, like poker hot from a fire or something, right through my head, right in my ear, right to my head. I can't scream. I can't fight. I can't do anything. And then I hear this voice that say, that was quick. Then I hear a voice that says, it was unfortunate that I felt pain. And I don't know who said that. I did not see anyone. Then I realized there's a ball of light out in front of me, maybe 20 or 25 feet. I'm kind of crappy with, that distance, but it's about the size of a basketball, and it's soft and it's easier to look at. And it's about as high up off the ground as I am tall, and I'm 5'3". And it went down really low till slow, almost to the ground, and then came back up again. And I felt like it was looking at me. I don't know why I felt that way, but I felt that. And I noticed movement in the yard at that point, and my vision was shot. It was like when you get your picture taken with the old time flash cubes and you don't blink. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember how that was. And then you can't see anything but white spots for like 20 minutes. Well, that's the way my eyes were at that point. I could see movement in front of me, and I could see what I thought were kids. And I thought in my mind, why are these kids in my mom's backyard? And they came from different parts of the yard, and they all kind of lined up in front of me off to my right, up closer towards the edge where the swimming pool fence started and the driveway was. And they all kind of just started to slide. They weren't really walking. They just kind of glided down in front of me. There were like 6 of them. And that is when I was watching them with my eyes because I can't move. And then I see that thing. We called it a craft because we don't know what else to call it. But in retrospect, years later, when I think about it, there's no way that even 6 kids could get in this thing and fly anywhere because it was small. It wasn't much bigger than the pump house of the swimming pool. And that was maybe equivalent to like one of those aluminum mini barns that you could buy in the hardware store parking lot, roughly about that size, height. It was shaped like an egg. So it was bigger in the middle than at the top. It was egg shaped, and with the bottom down lower. And I couldn't really tell for sure whether it was all the way on the ground or not, because I thought I could detect a slight little wobble every now and then, but I couldn't tell. I couldn't. Every time I looked at it, I wanted to look away. I didn't want to look at it, but I didn't want to not look at it because I needed to know if it was moving closer to me, And my vision was crummy. And I did note that there was like legs coming off from about midpoint. There was, I saw a couple of legs where I thought were legs, but they didn't look like they could support much weight. They were real skinny. So I'm not sure what they were. I don't know what they were. I can just use my words that I have that remotely resemble it. You know what I mean? And like I said, now there's no way 6 of anybody, even kids, could get in that thing and fly to another planet from somewhere else. So I have no idea what that was. I don't even know whether I was in it or not at one point. I don't remember. So anyway, I remember at one point thinking, and I'm still standing out here now, these kids are gone, and I'm thinking, oh, my children, because all this weirdness is going on out here, and my kids are in the house. And then I hear that same voice say, your children are fine. Then I hear my name. Well, it turns out it was my mom who called my name. And as soon as I heard my name, it was like somebody snapped a finger, and I just completely forgot that whole last 5 minutes or so, or whatever that was, that last thing I just told you was wiped out of my head. And I remember turning and walking across the patio, up the steps to the upper porch where the kitchen door opened up to, and Mom's head was hanging out the kitchen door. And she's like, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, everything's cool. And in my mind now, at this point, I'm thinking, I just want to go swimming. I I don't want to sew anymore. I don't want to cut patterns. So I go back to my friend's house and I say, hey, instead of doing this, how about we go swimming? And I talked to men, didn't take much talking. Come back and go swimming. She's like, yeah, that sounds good. So she grabs her bathing suit and, gets dressed. Her daughter, like a pre-teen at that time. And she comes with us and we go back to my house. We're walking across the yard to the pool and her daughter steps on something. And her daughter's like, ow, she thought, Deanna thought maybe she stepped on a bee or something, and we looked her foot over real good, didn't see anything. She insisted her foot was getting numb and tingly and her leg was getting tingly, but we didn't see anything. So we went in and got in the pool. And at that point, all of us are starting to feel kind of nauseous and my eyes are really starting to hurt. And I'm starting to notice halos around all the lights, like if you were ever a kid and you went swimming and you opened your eyes in the chlorine too many times and your eyes started doing that weird thing. Well, it was kind of like that, except I hadn't got my head in the water. And Deanna says, hey, let's go to White Castle. Maybe if we get something to eat, we'll feel better. And I'm like, okay, sounded like a good idea at the time. I don't know if you guys have White Castles or not, but
we used to.
Yeah, you know what they are then.
Yeah.
Not really a good thing to eat if you're nauseous, but
Yeah.
I bet a bunch of drunk people in Indiana would argue with you about that. But anyway, we started to head off to there. We got out, dried off, but we came to our senses before we actually got there, I think. And then they went home and I went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, my eyes were swelled, completely shut. Still not remembering that flash and that light or anything. Feeling like I've been hit by a train. Everything on me hurt. My eyes were swollen and oozy. And my mom took me to the emergency room. And the doctor at the emergency room, I don't even know why he was there. He was actually an eye doctor, which I don't think you normally find in an emergency room, but he was in the emergency room that day. And he had asked my mom, can you take her across the street to my office so I can get a better look at her? Because I have more equipment over there. I can look at her better. Mom, like, yeah, sure. So they took me over there. And he says, have you looked into the arc of a welder's torch? And I said, no. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you ask me that? That sounds like something some dumb person would do. I'm not dumb. But, and again, I never said anything to him about the light or my eyes hurting or anything like that. He asked me, did they been hurting me for the last few days? And I said, they didn't feel right last night, but they weren't like this, and when I got up yesterday morning, the morning before, they were fine. So anyway, creams and drops, some gooey stuff and drops, and it took several weeks for them to heal up. And my vision was never right after that. And I'll say it real quick now. At the age of 30 something, I was diagnosed with cataracts and macular degeneration.
Wow.
And by the time I hit 50, I have all new artificial lenses implanted because mine were just shot. And my macular degeneration remains stable and it is dry. But I have to have dilation every 6 months for the rest of my life. So, and they follow me pretty close. And the weird thing is I'm like the only person in my family that had that, except my older sister who has wet macular degeneration, but she's 70 some years old. Mine was diagnosed in my 30s. Mm-hmm. So I always blame that night.
Oh yeah. I can, that's pretty obvious. It was that.
Yeah, I don't have any proof. I can never prove that. And I'll say it right now. I don't know, and I'm not a doctor, but in my gut, in my heart of hearts, I blame that night on my eyes being wrecked.
Right.
And I'm thankful that I can still see. I went real farsighted after that. It was insane. I mean, I'm, at 30 years old, I was wearing 3s. So I now with the new lenses, I'm at 2.5. I can get away with 2.25. But anyway.
Was there anything specific about the light? Was it radioactive or anything like that anybody could tell?
I have no idea. My old man and my Uncle Jim, they were a weird bunch. They had all kinds of goodies out in the workshop.
Right.
And at one point, I'm not exactly sure when, it was way before Bud came, I think. Daddy and Uncle Jim, they had either Uncle Jim brought an old Geiger counter over that he had, or Daddy had one from like World War II. And they were out in the workshop messing with it, and they could get it to 0 in the workshop. But when they got to the backside of the swimming pool, they couldn't get it to 0. It just would go crazy. They are not professionals. You know, I'm just telling you that because they did do that, but I don't know if it's even worth anything. You know what I mean? Anyways, it was the following weekend, which was just a few days. I mean, this happened June 30th, and the 4th of July weekend come up, and the family all get together, swim, cook out, fire off Kmart fireworks, and annoy the neighbors. You know, that was our family tradition. So we're out, the kids come through the house with their towels. We're in the house, we're inside fixing stuff ready for food, and the kids run outside. And my nephew comes back in. He goes, "Grandma, what's wrong with your yard?" So all of us adults went out, and this was the first time we saw this. You know, days had passed. Right. I don't know why no one noticed it or looked out in the yard or anything, but all of us walked out there, and there was that mark. It was an 8-foot diameter circle with a little pushed up on the side and a big deep crack in it. It had a 49-foot swath that came straight as an arrow, exactly 2 feet wide all the way down, and ended in a perfect arc right up at the near the driveway. And my mom looks at it for a minute, and she says, "Oh, that's where our UFO landed the other night." And I looked at my mom, and I thought, what? And as soon as those words hit my ear, and I thought, why is she saying that? And it was like, bam, something just, bam, was like hit me with a ton of bricks. And I'm looking at this mark in the yard, and then I see these big black eyes. And then I remember I'd seen these big black eyes in 78, and that was not a dream. And I'd completely forgotten about that. I mean, it was like someone pulled the finger out of the dike, and memories just started coming back. And the next few days, I was a basket case. I didn't sleep for like 2 days. I just kept having memories and images. I remembered the light. I remembered being hit. I remembered the weird feeling. I got a phobia. The bathroom, upstairs bathroom, has a little window that overlooks where that mark was. Even before I actually saw the mark, like the day before, I started feeling weird. Like I didn't want to go in that bathroom at night by myself because I didn't want to get by that window because I thought someone was going to pull me out the window. And I thought, I know that sounds crazy. And I literally, I said, in retrospect, I believe I had a nervous breakdown, honest to God. I had read Missing Time months before. And, you know, I picked it up in a big stack of books. Wasn't quite sure what it was about when I grabbed it. Had an idea. Then I started trying to read it, and I had panic attacks. But really, I was thinking more of my sister. My older sister had an event in 65 that the whole family always knew about, and she stood by firmly, and we believed her. She had no reason to tell us a fib like that or make some crap up like that. And so I didn't read that whole book, but I did know in the back of the book there was an address where you could write this guy if you thought you'd had this experience. So I went, got the book, got the address. I wrote this 14-page letter. I took 14 million Polaroids of the backyard, and I stuck it in an envelope and gave it to my mom. Now she held on to it for a few weeks. She wasn't sure she wanted to open up. This is what she told Bud. She wasn't sure she wanted to open up that Pandora's box. And I'm like, okay. But she said she was at the mailbox mailing bills one day because I mean, back that's what you did. You mailed, you made out your bills on Friday and you went to mailbox. And something told her, Debbie's letter is in your purse. You need to mail it. And so she got it out, looked at it a minute, stuck it in there. And like a few weeks later, I was out with friends, and the phone, Mom, I came home, and Mom goes, "Hey, that guy who wrote that book called you." And I about flipped. I about passed out. She's like, "If you want to call him back," she said, "this phone number's up there by the phone." And I thought about it for a minute. I was shaking and my heart was pounding. And I thought, this is crazy. But I called him, and that was it. 3-year investigation. I went to New York a couple times. He came to Indiana a couple times. Well, people don't understand. Back then in 83, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have, I mean, we just had like CompuServe just was starting up in the 90s. Okay.
Right.
So 83, I didn't even know how to turn on a computer in 83. So I didn't get to spend that much physical time with him. And he did not hypnotize me very many times. I think maybe 4 or 5 all totaled in the whole of my life, because he was 1,500 miles away. We didn't even have phone. He would call me once a week for like 5 minutes, but most of our communication was written. I wrote him letters, and he set me up with a buddy who I spoke to on the phone. She was older and had been more aware of her experiences for longer than me. So she kind of was helping me, mentoring me, guiding me, just giving me somebody that I could talk to without ridicule, because it was a different time than it is now. You think it's bad now. You should have been here 38 years ago.
Oh, I know.
So anyway, and for that whole year afterwards, paranormal activity ramped up in the house. We'd had it before. And to me, it was normal. Most people, I thought everybody had weird stuff like that happen to them all the time. I didn't know it wasn't normal. And but the paranormal stuff started ramping up. Mom and I had another very spectacular, I think, sighting in April of 84. And, Bud started working on, he came out and he interviewed neighbors, and we found people who had witnessed things that night. 2 different neighbors, one on one side and one across the street, who'd actually witnessed bright flash. The lady across the street said it sounded like a jet plane was crashing in her house. She was a night nurse, and she was still in bed asleep, about going to get up pretty soon. But she said she woke up before the alarm because it sounded like a jet plane was going to crash in her house. And she saw a bright flash, and all the clocks in the front part of her house stopped. And the front part of her house was the closest to my house. And then the lady next to us, the houses were divided by a thin row of trees. They were a little farther apart than typical neighborhoods. And she reported to Bud that she had seen a flash from the backyard. Her television screen went red, I believe she said. And I believe her husband told Bud that when he came in from work, she was so upset and shook up that she was like behind the couch or something. And she thought somebody was coming to get her. And we didn't even really, we knew who we had said, like, hey, you know what I mean? But we didn't really, talk. So, and then Bud wrote the book. Eventually he got so much information from so many people that went for so long and so far back, all the way back to when my mom was a little kid. He's like, I need to write another book. This needs to be a book. And my family and myself at first were like, nah, I don't think so. that wasn't that was not our goal here. I just wanted to be, I was desperate to have a normal life. I wanted to feel normal again and have a normal life. And I was that desperate.
Right.
I didn't want somebody writing a book about us. Neither did my parents. But after talking to Bud a few more times, my parents were like, yeah, maybe we should do this. And I'm like, okay. And I took one for the team. So I was the one that was going to be the spokesperson.
Right.
But I was blessed because I had the mark in the yard. I had medical records. I had these witnesses now. I had my family. I had the support of my whole family. I've had most of the other weird stuff I've encountered in my whole life has been with somebody else, not just me. Because honestly, if it was always only just me, I would doubt myself.
Yeah.
Because I doubted myself with other people. And, you know what I mean? I was still searching for the prosaic explanation on things. But I've been very fortunate. I am like, that's not how it usually happens. So that's one of the reasons I decided later to write it from my own perspective and, do what I did. But it's been weird.
Yeah.
I know.
I've heard so much about different experiencers and some of the things they go through. I mean, just like with you and your mom and your sister, it no doubt to me that all three of you had experiences. I mean, you did have some physical things with the scoops and the scoop marks, and you know, back in '78, you lost a child under mysterious circumstances.
Yes, I did.
Do you want to talk about that a bit? If you don't mind?
I don't mind. It's ooh, my ear just popped. That's weird. I have a weird sound in my ear, but no, I don't mind. Yeah, it was before I had my son. So I was engaged to the guy that I believed was the father. And in my brain, I'm always going to say that because I have to live with it.
Right.
But I do remember I do have these weird memories or dreams or whatever, you know, I feel most comfortable with calling it. We were supposed to get married in June, but we moved our wedding up to April because I found out I was pregnant, and I wasn't 18. I didn't turn 18 until February. So technically I got pregnant before I was 18. And, you know, in my family, if you're not married and you live at daddy's house and you think you're pregnant, you make damn sure you are before you tell him, because it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, been there, done that. I've been through the same thing, so, I understand you completely.
And my dad, you know, so my mom we went to the doctor. I had a pregnancy test and a physical exam, and the doctor's like, "Yeah, you're pregnant." And I thought I got pregnant in December because that's when I slept with my boyfriend for the first time. Well, the doctor thought I was farther along. I felt farther along. And so I kind of dismissed that at the time, but I had something weird happen to me in November with 2 other girls. And I do have some vague memories of something painful being done to me, you know. So it could be tied back to that, but maybe not. I don't know. But
you know, you have experience, just by what you told me, a lot heard of from a lot of women. I had one experiencer, seriously, he was like 27 and had 6 pregnancies taken right after the first trimester. And she knows that they came and took the child. She just knows.
Well, when I woke up that day, you know, it was in March, I think. I had been babysitting for my older sister, and I fell asleep on the couch, and I woke up in my niece's bed. And I woke up immediately thinking, "Oh my God, my baby's gone," you know? And I thought, "Oh, you're just crazy. You just had a nightmare, or, you know, you got weird pregnancy hormones." And I went to the bathroom just to make sure everything looked fine, and it did, but I couldn't shake it. It kept eating at me all day long, and it was really getting to me.
Yeah.
So my girlfriend, who happened to be one of the girls that was with me that previous November, actually, she's like, "Come on with me to Planned Parenthood, get a pregnancy test, and then you'll shut up. You'll feel better." I'm like, "Okay." So I went, and the test was negative. And I remembered the look on Dolores's face when that woman told me. She's like, "Oh shit, I got to get her out of here now because she's about to go." I was stunned when she said, "You're not pregnant, and if you don't have your period in the next week, you need to contact your doctor." And I'm like, "What?" So I told my mom, I said, "Something's wrong. I got to go to the doctor. I got to go to the doctor. Something isn't right." So she took me to the doctor. He gave me another pregnancy test and another exam. And then he said, "Come into my office, and we'll talk." Me, mom, and him. And he said, "Well, you're not pregnant." And my mom goes, "Well, what the hell happened to it?" And he says, "We see this sometimes." I remember him saying this. "We see this sometimes. It happens in, you know, my suggestion to you is that you just forget this ever happened. You're young and you'll have plenty of other kids." And my mom's like, "Well, does she even, you know, does she need a D&C or something?" Because this is March and I was pregnant in, you know, January, or, you know, middle end of January. And he's like, "No, she's fine." And I remember the last thing I said to him is, "You know what? I'm not going to forget this." Yeah. But you know what? When we left that day, Mom and I didn't talk about it. It was never spoken about again in my family. Never. We never talked about it again. And then I went on to have my other two boys, in 79 and in 80. And I never thought I thought about it, but I never talked about it again until Bud came and the mark in the yard happened. And I don't know why I started dreaming about that whole time. And he had come to Indiana, and we had gone to see somebody else who had written him, and he was going to interview them, do a kind of an interview with them while he was here. So I went with him because I showed him how to get to where he was going. I drove him over there. And on the way back, I remember pulling in the driveway, and I just blurted out to him, I lost a pregnancy. And I remember the look on his face. God love him. He looked at me like, oh, I'm sorry. But I could tell he thought, okay, what the hell does this have to do with anything? And I started to shut off. I'm like, no, I can't do this, because of the way he looked. And he goes, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I don't know why I feel like I need to tell you this. I don't know why. I don't understand. And I started crying. I said, I feel crazy. I feel like a crazy person because I know how crazy this sounds. I don't know why I'm telling you this.
Yeah.
And then as it turns out, I guess it was probably a good thing I did, he started getting like crap tons of letters from women all over the world who were telling him.
And that's about the time a lot of this stuff started coming mainstream in the abduction scenarios. I remember it well because, the fact that the reproduction thing was starting to come into the scenarios.
And I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to tell him. I didn't want him when he first wrote the book. I'm like, you can put anything in there you want, except don't put that in there. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And he's like, why? And I'm like, I can't do that. I said, I lost a baby. I walked around thinking I was pregnant for a few months. I loved that baby. And when I lost it, it broke my heart. I can't do that, especially not connected with this, because this is crazy right here. And I already know that. No. And I don't know what it was about that guy, but he says, he started showing me letters from women, and I would cry when I read them because I knew how they felt. And I finally said, oh, what the hell? Okay, I'm already screwed. I've already ruined my life. Just pile it on at this point. I don't care. We use pseudonyms. Even the place Copley Woods is a pseudonym, to protect our family, mainly my kids, But I was out there. My face was out there with Bud because I felt like I owed it to him. He helped me to survive, and I felt like I owed it to him to help him when he wrote this book and get the word out, And so,
I remember when you were out on the circuit. I remember when you were out there.
I hated every second.
I bet you did. I've heard that from other people as well. It was
it is not
a lot
my
of people
thing.
just felt like it was an invasion of privacy, though they knew that.
And I didn't mind talking about the mark in the yard so much, but when it got to the baby stuff, that's when, and I still kind of,
I understand.
I still kind of get that way again. It is what it is. And all I know is I can tell you what I know, and the rest you're going to have to figure out. I don't, anything beyond pure just fact is my own theory, and I might be wrong. Hell, I don't know. But I'm just saying. But it's so. I mean, like I said, I'm grateful, and my experiences. In the beginning, when I was young, it was always so traumatic, and I had so much trouble with anxiety, and even not so much depression, but anxiety-driven depression.
Anxiety seems to be the number one problem that we get from experiencers. And I
got diagnosed with PTSD before I even had stuff that could cause PTSD.
Yeah. That does not surprise me at all.
But it's like, now I'm good. I have transitioned. I have grown, and I have let go of a lot of the fear and
Mm.
anxiety
Mm-hmm.
regarding this. And I'm working on myself in other ways as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I have made it through. And I go to a therapist now, and I do EMDR treatment for PTSD because I watched my husband kill himself. I watched my husband commit suicide with a 12 gauge in our backyard. And that I didn't even remember seeing it or hearing it for 3 months. So that tells you how powerful the mind is. My mind wiped that too. And I was standing out there with a bunch of sheriff department guys. So we all knew what I saw.
Yeah.
But, and then in 2013, I had a tornado come and destroy my house completely.
Yes, you did. I thought that was pretty remarkable.
And I was
Do you think that was kind of caused by what was going on, or?
I know it sounds crazy, and I
heard crazier, but
I tell the story in the book because I mean, and even the lady who wrote that book, E Squared, Pam Groot, I think her name, somebody told her what I had said about her book and all, that she wants to put it on her website. And I'm like, that's fine. Go ahead, put it on your webpage. It is crazy, but I've been, I don't know why my brain has kind of exploded over the last 5 or 7 years or so with all these. I'm thinking outside the box, a lot of string theory and multiverse kind of stuff. And I read that book, E Squared, about manifesting things that you want in your life, to reach out into that energy field and just pull it to you. And it worked. I'd done like a few of the small exercises, and then the next day there'd be like a $12 check in the mail or some little surprise that I didn't, expect. Well, we bought this house. We paid for it knowing we were going to have to buy a new roof, furnace, and air conditioner, because that's why we got a good deal on it. Right. But the roof looked pretty good. But then my insurance company turned into a bunch of asses, and they decided that if I don't put a new roof on it within a year, they're not going to insure it. And I'm like, why? It doesn't leak and it looks great. What is wrong with you? So I started worrying about, this move is costing me more money than I thought it was going to, and I started stressing about money. Everybody does it. And I'd been reading her book and thinking, I can't do that. I can't worry about what I don't have. I have to think about what I'm going to get, and changing everything. Well, I was doing these exercises, and I went to bed after reading a couple more paragraphs in this exercise. And I woke up and I'm like, you know what? What the hell do I have to lose? So I got up, came in my little she shed here, got myself all zenned up and booted up or whatever, just trying to get my energy going and my inner stuff. And then I said, I want a new air conditioner, a new furnace, and a new roof ASAP. Bam. And I felt good, because in that very moment, I felt that I already had those things. I could feel it at that very moment that I said that and put it out there. Right. So I go to bed, and 36 hours later, the tornado comes through town, and my house is the only house on the street that is completely flattened. Everybody lost shingles and roofs and things. And other people in other parts of town were devastated. Don't get me wrong. We weren't the only one. 40 people lost their homes that day, and businesses were, little town of 25,000. We were wrecked. But on my street, I was the only house that was like, it was like the tornado went, oh, there she is.
She needs a new roof. She needs a new air conditioner. We're going to get the insurance company to get her one.
I got a new roof, a new air conditioner, a new furnace, and new everything.
Yeah.
It took 10 months because 2 weeks later there was 17 inches of snow on the ground. But nevertheless, and I told my husband, he saw me reading her second book, which is like E cubed or something like that. And he said, oh, hell no. I said, don't worry. He goes, next time you do that, be more specific about the delivery method. Why don't you?
Interesting.
So, I included it in my book mostly just because I thought it was kind of funny. It's kind of a funny, coincidental kind of thing. Maybe. I'm open-minded, so I don't know. I think humans are powerful beings, and we're more powerful than we think.
You talk about money manifestation, law of attraction, that whole thing. If you ask for it, if you really completely put yourself into it, I've seen it work. I have seen it work.
The universe has taken care of me My mom said I was the only kid she had that could fall into a bucket of shit and come out smelling like a rose every time. And she had no idea how I was doing that. And I said, I don't care.
Yeah.
She said, look at us. We were sitting on my front porch having a cigarette. I smoked at the time and drinking coffee. She goes, when you were little, you told me you were going to live in a white house with a green roof and a porch swing. And I said, I did, didn't I? She goes, look where we're at. Like we were sitting on my front porch, on my porch swing, this big white farmhouse with a green roof.
Wow.
I used to say, I'm going to be divorced. I'm going to be widowed. I'm going to have a kid. I'm going to do this. I would tell my mom all the stuff that I was going to do when I was growing up. And I did it. And I didn't even know what the hell I was talking about when I was a kid.
Let me ask you this. After everything you went through, do you think it helped you or do you think it was a detriment?
People have asked me before, would you change anything? Would you not have these experiences? And I said, I would not change a thing.
Yeah.
It was hard. Honestly, my therapist and I because she knows about this stuff. My therapist, she actually knows about all the weird stuff as well as all the normal life weird stuff. And she said, I really think that you got through KO's suicide and even the tornado better than a lot of people have because you already had experience with trying to get through stuff that, you couldn't even talk about. And you were able to do that. And I said, that's Bud. For all my life, I will always be forever grateful that I met him because had I not, there is nothing about my life that would even remotely be recognizable. Wouldn't be married to the guy I am now. I wouldn't have had the job I've had for 15 years. My kids wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have my granddaughter. Nothing would be the same if it hadn't been for Bud. As far as I'm concerned, if it hadn't been for Bud, I might not even be alive.
Really?
When I got on that bus to go to New York for the first time, I had the massive panic attack and almost jumped off halfway because I thought to myself, what in the hell are you doing? You are going to New York City, big city. And I was scared of being lost at the time. And you're going to this big city all by yourself, 20-some-year-old kid, to see a guy who wrote a book about UFOs and aliens. He could be a nut job. You could be crazy and he could be an axe murderer. What is wrong with you? You're a mother. And I just had this massive panic attack and almost got off the bus. And I'm so thankful that I didn't.
Yeah, I think you should be grateful. Bud was a great researcher. He really was. I mean,
he was an even better human being.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I can only speak for my experience with him, but I will tell you that for me, he was a lifesaver. He was one of the most compassionate and empathic persons I ever known in my life. Yeah. My entire family loved him, and his family just took me into the fold and accepted me. And I mean, I was so blessed, and I am grateful every single day.
Well, it's good to have somebody like that can kind of walk you through the whole thing, and that you can put your trust into, and
Yeah, I was lucky. I got him in the beginning, and then there was a point in time where at one point I kind of felt abandoned by him, sort of like a little mad at him. But I realized, look, you're doing fine now. And there's other people out there that aren't and need him more than you did. They were like you were when you found him. So, I had to do a little growing up and letting go. But, I was very lucky.
Do you think because of your experiences that you developed any type of abilities or gifts that you didn't have before?
That's been a question often asked. And sometimes I wonder if, did my experiences, the early contact when I was younger, facilitate some change that opened me up to things? Or was I born this way? Was there something different in me, in my mom, inside of me, in my mom's womb, that attracted him to me? It's like which came first, the egg or the chicken or the egg? But I do feel I have. Listen, I don't think I'm any better or any more special than any other human being because we all could do this. But something in my there's a switch in me that's been flipped on.
Mm-hmm.
I've grown a couple of extra neurons somewhere. Some connections have been made. I think I can see things that a lot of other people can't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not saying nobody else can. I think there's maybe millions of people like me out there. One of the reasons I'm trying to speak out is because I want those people, because I know exactly what they're thinking, and they know things and they ain't saying.
Yeah.
I want them to be comfortable to speak out, and it's okay. It's not 1983 anymore, and we can talk about this, and you know what I mean. So, but I feel like I've developed some like knowing of people. I sense people's energies. Everyone's energy is different, like a fingerprint. I can feel when someone comes up behind me, and I know if I don't know them because I don't recognize their energy.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm exactly the same way. That's exactly the way it feels.
it is. And I can
Yes.
I can walk down the aisle at Walmart, and I don't even know a person, but if I get close enough to them, I can kind of see their life in a brief flash. And if they're really creepy, I don't even have to get that. All I got to do is walk by them, and I'll be like, ooh, what was that? You know?
Yeah, I think these experiences do change people. And, you know, I've heard of experiencers or abductees, or how you want to call them, be healed from different illnesses or ailments. But, you know, there's something more that they're giving. You know, intuitiveness, maybe, but I think it's an ability to project yourself and to be able to understand better. You know, and
I see the bigger picture.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
see the bigger picture. I see the oneness and the connection to all of us. And, you know, it sounds woo-woo-y, and I would have been the first one to laugh at it 35 years ago, but it's true.
Yeah.
And yeah, so.
Amazing. You know, you and I talked about this before the show, the Kokomo boom. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind?
No, I don't mind. One of the ways that I deal with things that scare me is to throw myself right into it. I'm the person who jumps in the cold water.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined MUFON to learn more about UFO stuff, you know, to help myself and as well as help others. And I had been a MUFON investigator for many years, for like 10 years, and then I'd quit for a variety of reasons. And then I moved up here to where I live now in the Kokomo area. And I know it was like in March, I was at a girlfriend's house, and driving home through the country, I saw these 3 orange balls of light. They appeared one at a time. They were low, they were large, and they kind of danced around each other before they popped out. And I'm like, whoa. And I hurried home, and I remember running I was ducking. Don't ask me why. I was like ducking as I ran from my car to my front porch, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I told my husband about it. He kind of was like, whatever, you know. I'm like, I'm going to show you. I got me a camcorder that would do low light. I still sucked at using it, but I bought one, and I started hanging out at the local parks and everywhere outside at night, because I was bound and determined to catch these, because I saw them one other time with a couple other people, and I didn't have any way to record them. This was, you know, before cell phones had good cameras on them and stuff.
Right.
So I was out that night at Jackson Morrow Park, and I did record. One orange ball of light came in, and I knew at least one more was going to come in, and it started to manifest. And then I could see jets coming from the north, and it wasn't too long before I realized they were Air Force jets. And I knew I was in a MOA. So, and I mean, we live close to Grissom, so we see them. But the orange light popped out real quick, and then the jets came and were crisscrossing. They were like looking for something. They were crisscrossing the entire MOA back and forth. And I knew they were looking for something. And, but it got to be late, had to go to be at work at 6:30 next morning. I had a big cup of coffee. I had to pee. So I had to go home. So I got home, but I kept thinking, I'm going to miss something. I just felt it. And I stood out on my end of my driveway, and I recorded in the area where I had been. Couldn't see anything, but all of a sudden every wild animal and every dog in the neighborhood started howling and it was creepy. And I managed to record that on my video recorder.
Wow.
Until I couldn't hold my pee any longer. So I went in, I gave up. I went in the house, went to the bathroom, put my nightgown on, went into my office to try to get this videotape off of my recorder and onto my computer. And I just remembered looking up at the clock and this bright oranges yellow flash of light, bam, the whole house shook. And this loud explosion, this bright flash of light filled the room because I had windows on two sides. And I heard a big thump on my roof. And I thought, what the hell is that? And I ran and tried to wake my husband up. I'm like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? He didn't hear it. And then in my mind, I thought, oh, those jets, they were crisscrossing, must have crashed into each other. And that thump I heard, because I only lived a couple miles from there. That thump I heard was some, air pilot jettison out of his, out of his airplane when it crashed. So I grabbed my house coat and I'm right outside in my galoshes running around in the yard looking for a body in a parachute, because I'm thinking that's what I heard. Yeah. And then my phone rings. My son calls me. He's a cab driver, works the late shift. And he's like, Mom, are you guys all right? I'm like, yeah, why? What's going on? So then he tells me, we've been pulled off the road by the police department has pulled all of our cars off the road, told us to stay off the road. And he said that they said there's a plane crash over by the house. And I'm like, whoa, shit. I ran upstairs and I got on the computer and I went to the police radio scanner site and I hit the record button. And I ended up recording it for multiple hours, maybe 5 hours of recordings.
Really?
And they said some interesting stuff that like I'm at the only known debris site. Somebody call up a Grissom and ask them what's going on, all kinds of stuff, until they finally switched to a secure network. But it took a while, and they had like 148 or 149 calls come in from people all over the place, different counties, and some people closer to the area reported seeing a bright flash in the sky when they thought a plane two planes had crashed. And I think a few people actually even reported a UFO in the area. So,
there were UFO sites. I remember that exactly when it happened. I for whatever reason, I got a call from somebody in Kokomo and told me that something's going on. And Kokomo has had a history of UFO activity.
I think it's not a coincidence that I landed here.
Probably. But when things started coming out about this, I don't know what you think. I personally believe a UFO craft or something literally either exploded or crashed. And
no
doubt. And because it was now the fact that you said that your son and all the other drivers got pulled, I never heard that before.
Yeah, he was a cab driver, and their dispatch said everybody off the road.
Well, see, that's a confirmation to me right there. Something really weird happened.
Definitely.
So, interesting. Well, I'm glad I talked to you about that because that's firsthand information for me. Because it always intrigued me. I just didn't know what exactly it was, but of course, the next day when the news came out, they were talking about UFO sightings and lights in the sky and this and that. But really, there wasn't a whole much of it beyond that. But interesting. Well, Deborah, tell everyone about your book, where they can get it, and your website, and what you do over there.
My website is called Deb's UFO Information Clearinghouse, and the URL for it is www.debshome.com. And my husband is my webmaster. We try to put the current news, science, and UFO stuff, and even other paranormal encrypted stuff when we find it on there to share. And I, share some of my stories. There's a few things on there that aren't in the book and some things that happened. I was a bad girl, 15 years working in a factory. I didn't update my blogs and things like I should, but now that I'm going to be retired, and I am basically retired, I hopefully will be vlogging on there. And you can also email me through the website there. And the book, Extraordinary Contact, Life Beyond Intruders, you can get it at Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Nobles, any of your bigger online booksellers. And it is also available on Kindle.
It's an excellent book.
Hopefully one day I'll get an audiobook of it.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it gives a real nice, it kind of rounds out Bud's book, and people, but we talk about Bud, but Bud Hopkins' book was Intruders, and that's kind of the classic book about alien experiencers, and I highly recommend it, and to read yours afterwards. So, thanks, Deborah, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
And thanks for asking.
You have a good weekend.
I will. You do the same.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Now, if you have an unexplained encounter or sighting, feel free to contact me through the Phantoms and Monsters blog site. I want to again thank Debra Jordan-Kauble for joining me this evening, and thanks to each and all of you for watching and chatting. And if you made a super chat donation, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes this possible. Please like, subscribe, and share. So I think next week, I don't even know. I've been so busy now. I did a recording on a live show before I did this one tonight. So, and I don't know if you saw the maintenance guy go by here. I had a water leak in my place. So I'm kind of scatterbrained, but thanks again for hanging with me. So until next week, stay healthy. Have a safe, enjoyable weekend. Good night.